Hello again. Now we're going to talk about some common themes that you're going to see through the Renaissance period. And while we may not always name them in our discussions, they are impacting the discussions we have because they became pervasive. And this is a period in England when a lot of mindsets are changing, and so society and culture are really developing and grasping onto these, which can cause a lot of tension. Which to us modern readers may look weird because we are in a society based on the ideas that are taking over in England, but they're worth looking at. So we can't get a full understanding of them today, but we'll get at least a good introduction. So humanism starts because we, as a society, they realize that past quote unquote pagan men are fascinating and they are worth studying. We should not only study religious people. This is a move to no longer submit to the human spirit, but to unleash it and let curiosity grow and find self assertion. Because man is now both a complete man, he can be a scholar, poet, and gentleman, but the man is also a measure of all things and malleable. Man is the source of knowledge, but because man can change, knowledge and truth can change. And hopefully, you can understand how, for a society that was controlled by religion for so long, and still is, but like this is going to be groundbreaking and earth shattering and could cause a lot of tension. Um, Once Henry VIII comes on to the throne, this idea really takes off. And by the time we get to Elizabeth I, it is a very strong and controlling part of society. And we are very much so celebrating um, humans and what they can do and interested in that idea. However, this has an interesting impact on education and curriculum reform because people wanted to make sure now that we're studying the past that the right topics were still being covered and people were getting good education. So instead of only focusing on grammar, logic, and rhetoric, we're now going to study arithmetic and geometry and astronomy and music and make sure we're very well-rounded people. Um, this is, quick note, only for male education. Female education would have still been limited completely to the elite and wealthy, and what education they did get was not really formalized. They might have focused on learning language, music, religion, needlework, whereas the men were going through a more formal process. We no longer care about focusing on preparing men for the church, but now just to prepare men to understand culture and have literacy and just be good, well rounded people looking to understand knowledge, morals, politics, and philosophical ideas. What's also great about this human creation means that yes, we want to study the classics and translate them so people can enjoy them, but we're going to be translating them to English, promoting the English language. But we also want to boost our own national pride by studying works written by English people. So humanism is going to help develop the literature space for us. Another big thing happening right now is the Reformation. So we've been Catholic. It is still the official religion. It is still controlling everything, even though there is a lot of tension. In the 14th century, a man named John Wycliffe tries to challenge this. However, it's quickly suppressed. However, in Germany in 1517, there's a man by the name of Martin Luther. That may sound familiar. He nails to the church door his challenges and the Reformation takes off. It does not reach England very quickly, and when it does get to England, the real push for Reformation is not the same push as the continental Europe. Henry VIII, who had been labeled the defender of the faith by the Pope, decides he wants to divorce his first wife. And he wants the power in England to be with the monarchy, not to be the church. And that's a very basic understanding of what's going on here. But because of this, he breaks off with the Catholic Church and forms the Church of England. And now we have Protestantism happening in England. That doesn't mean that all versions of Protestant faiths are welcome. You were to belong to the Church of England, but we have that break. So Henry VIII is Protestant. His first child to follow him in 1547 is Protestant. However, in 1553, when his second child becomes ruler, this is Mary, she returns to Catholicism. And so there's a little backlash there. Then 1558, Elizabeth I becomes queen, and she is a Protestant. However, she does try to be less aggressive and keep down zealotry But if you're going to go into the government or go to university, you do have to swear an oath to her. So for the next hundreds of years, Catholicism and Protestantism will flip flop back and forth, and it causes a lot of conflict. It is across all levels of society for a long time. It's not just like one single event, it is a constant strife that we will kind of pick up on as we go. Then we have the idea of Tudor style. So the Tudor style goes beyond just how things look. It also is impacting other realms, but they really care about rhetoric. So remember that rhetoric is essentially effective communication. So this means literature and education are going to focus on persuasion, and they're going to start having really complex signals to get you. So we're going to have a lot of hyperboles. We're going to develop hundreds of new forms. And England had schemes, so or forms, patterns of words that they used to show beauty or power of expression. And there's just hundreds of them, and most of them knew lots of them. Shakespeare, for example, uses 200 different schemes regularly. So you language and the way you used it was clearly important. They favored elaborate ornamentation in both their language and dress and how things are made and how things look. So yes, you could be plain of your speech, but it should only be used to make a powerful contrast and a big point. Otherwise, you should be using elaborate language. So things were well formulated. They were very fixed because to help show remarkable emotional intensity, psychological nuance, and imagistic complexity, as your Norton tells you. But they still had very elaborate actions going on through their life. Um, it does pull in some contradicting ideals for us. So you would have different modes and different schemes. But you might look at something like the pastoral, the heroic, the lyric, the satiric, tragic, comic, etc. We're not confined in one way. And a lot of times it felt like writers were discovering the world for the first time. However, you don't have to be accurate. So they might be, oh, I just discovered this and it's beautiful, but they could give a false description as long as it sounded pretty and was impressive happening, which ties in directly to these writers, printers, and patrons. Literature does become printed, but well, we would expect literature to be printed, but it's not how we consider modern publishing. We have manuscripts that people are coming from, and a lot of it's done posthumously. So after the person had died, then it becomes widely published and shared or copied from manuscripts. Um, anything that we do have can be a little bit questionable in terms of is this correct because there is no copyright. Um, so people could take what you did and change it, but still pretend it is what you made. It also means that you're not being paid for what you write. You get like a one-time, like public, like I'll buy this from you for one time, and then all the money goes to the copiers. So people are not making a career out of writing. Yes, we have famous writers, but they are not making a career out of this. They have to do other things. There's also no freedom of press. So in 1557, the Stationers' Company is chartered, and they are responsible for approving and censoring things. So your books, your writings had to be approved by an Archbishop of Canterbury and the Bishop of London, or 6 different counselors to be published. So it is a very controlled environment of what is officially published. However, things are not effectively suppressed as much because people could still handwrite manuscripts and copy things out. And censors do focus on more of history and religious ideas, not necessarily entertainment, but you could still lose your life and or career if you're not careful. How it's published tells you how important it is. So a quarto, which is a small volumes, had 4 pages printed on the side of a sheet. They folded it and stitched it together. That's mainly for plays and poetry. Something that need to be more respectfully treated would be printed in a folio. And so that's a larger volume. It's only folded once, so 2 pages per side. So quarto, less important, more entertainment based. Folio, more important, should be more respectfully treated. However, women of this time don't even try and to do this. Most women were not taught how to write because it was too dangerous to educate women enough to be able to write. So there are financial rewards, but it's mainly for males. Actually, it's all for males. Um, and now the universities and middle class can help impact literature and theater, but really there's a censorship going on and things aren't being published like we expected to be based off how many copies of things we have today. What's really exciting in this period is theater takes off. So in 1567, you have the first permanent freestanding theater um, built. You have acting companies who are assigned to different noblemen. So you have the king's men because the king provides the funding for them to happen. Still focusing on religious, moral, and political themes, but that will quickly change. We have new types of theater called revenge tragedy. You might have a villain tragedy. You could have history plays. They're going to want to be looking to mimicking classics. And so all of these new entertainments are coming out. It doesn't only have to be about religion. In 1590, we do have a really big turning point. Christopher Marlowe comes on the scene. Theater becomes recognized as a way to express yourself and entertain yourself. And then you add music and dance to theater. Theaters are starting to become more and more common, and they're all can be found all over. The theater itself could hold about 2,000 spectators. We do an oval shape to have three sides of viewing. So today you kind of have the one, all three. They are charging admissions, and where you sat or stood based how much you'd pay. So you could pay standing view all the way up to seated. These are also only allowed outside of city limits because the church is not a fan of them, and it also keeps them safe from authority if they're outside of limits and can't be restrained that way. It is viewed as a direct competition with the church, so the church is not very happy about them, and that's going to cause a lot of conflict back and forth, such as people don't like that it combines forms. They don't like that it's a blank stage. They don't like that there's a lot of noise and crowds and carriages coming around all the time. People concerned about public health. You're in tight places, plays can spread. People are using the bathroom wherever they need to. You could find physical forms of entertainment there. So public health concerns, people are thinking this is going to lead to crime, or it's going to pull people away from work in their school and they're going to become lazy, or maybe we're going to promote dangerous ideas. And then, like I said, immoral sexual desires, because not only could you find prostitutes, but you have boys acting as females, and some are going to argue that this is going to lead to a rise of homosexuality. So while theater is booming and there's a lot of great things happening during this period, there's also a lot of strong complaints. So the last idea that we're going to talk about today is just the idea of we're becoming a national, having a growth of national pride. We view ourselves as the English, and this is our culture. But that does mean we now have the idea of that's other, it's different from us. We don't like it. So we want to focus on the new world and new explorations, not just Rome. London is a site of riots and protests because there are a lot of things coming in. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism rise during this time. Then we have a small African population that comes in, and it's going to have some mixed views. It's going to be pseudo-scientific beliefs about them, meaning like they look this way because of the climate. There's going to be some theological. They look this way because they're cursed. And then also like the idea is what makes a servant, what makes a slave. So we don't have slavery, but at least in England, they say they don't have slavery. There is some evidence they did, but servants are not necessarily treated the same. So as a country, they feel like a new world that's worth exploring and worth being proud of, but they are also they can become they're growing in racism or xenophobia, and different beliefs against other cultures as we become, ooh, we're proud of England. So this tension starts rising of we want to enjoy other cultures, but we want to be England in that culture, and how do we fit together with